Hey there, I'm Pascal, and welcome to another home automator tutorial. And I want up front to say I am very sorry that I'm looking on this side. That's where my notes are right now. I'm hoping that I will be solving this shortly. All right, so I know that your time is valuable, and because of that, I've added chapters to this tutorial. You can access them on the video timeline or in the description. If you want to skip to the meaty stuff, go straight to about the SGP30 air quality sensor linked below. This is part 3 of the series, and we'll continue to add to our room multi-sensor by adding this air quality sensor. So we are going to learn how to monitor our room's eCO2 and TVOC. Before I start though, if you are new to the channel, please go and start with the first of the series, where I explain how to set up an ESP32 and get the most out of it. You can go to the series right here in the card, and I'll leave a link in the playlist. If you want to follow me during this tutorial, my code is on GitHub. I will also leave that in the description below. Before we go any further, there are a few thanks that I have to give. I want to thank Steve and Stephen for their messages and coffee contributions. The channel will grow thanks to people like Steve and Stephen. But all of you that have commented, that have liked, that have watched my videos, I want to thank you too. This is my 12th video. I want to go forward and do many more. Lastly, I'd love you to head over to my Patreon. I'm not asking you to join, but there are news there that explain a bit more about my situation and the situation of this channel. I think it's important that you understand. Now that I've got all of that out of the way, let me explain what eCO2 and TVOC is and why we should monitor it. For today's tutorial, we'll need a few things. Hardware-wise, we will need either an SGP30 air quality sensor module or a CC811 air quality sensor module. Also, we'll need some software. Home Assistant, and if you don't have Home Assistant yet, I will leave a link in the description below so that you can go and install it. And ESPHome. Again, I will leave the link in the description. Now, why do we want an eCO2 and TVOC sensor? Why would we want to monitor air quality? Monitoring eCO2 and tidal carbon dioxide offers several crucial advantages, particularly in the context of indoor air quality and health. Firstly, virus transmission mitigation. eCO2 monitors provide a valuable gauge on an area's ventilation. As people exhale, they release CO2, and individuals carrying airborne viruses also emit tiny viral particles. So the one is linked with the other. High CO2 level indicates a potential concentration of these particles. By monitoring CO2, we can identify poorly ventilated space and take corrective actions, from mechanical ventilation or ensuring that doors and windows remain open. This helps to reduce the risk of virus transmission and keep indoor air fresh and safe. Secondly, it helps to have a better comfort and higher productivity. Beyond virus control, eCO2 monitoring contributes to a more pleasant environment for occupants. Studies reveal that elevated CO2 levels can lead to drowsiness, impaired cognitive performance, headache, and reduced concentration. Now, I'm going to just go through my notes on total volatile organic compounds, or TVOCs, offer several crucial benefits for our health and well-being. Awareness and informed decision. TVOC monitoring empowers us with the knowledge about the indoor air quality. By understanding TVOC levels, we can identify sources of VOC emissions, volatile organic compounds, and take informed action. Whether it's improving ventilation or eliminating specific VOC sources, this awareness helps to create healthier home environment for our families. TVOC encompasses a diverse group of organic and chemical found in both indoor and outdoor air. While some are harmful and naturally occurring, others, like formaldehydes and benzene, can be very harmful. Monitoring TVOC allows us to distinguish between these variants and take necessary steps to protect ourselves from adverse health effects. By keeping TVOC levels in check, we contribute to our overall well-being and comfort. I will discuss the levels of these effects for both eCO2 and TVOC later in this tutorial. The SGP30 is a digital multi-pixel gas sensor designed for easy integration into IoT devices. The technology utilizes Sensorion CMOS technology, which integrates a complete sensor system on a single chip. It includes a digital I2C interface, a temperature-controlled micro hot plate, and two pre-processed indoor quality sensors. The gas detection of the SGP30 can detect a wide range of TVOCs or VOCs and H2, hydrogen. It provides two calibrated air quality signal for easy integration. The SGP30 comes in a very compact 6-pin DFN package. The typical accuracy is within measured values of 15%. The sensor we're going to be using today is the SGP30. Its pinouts include the following: VCC for the sensor power from 1.8 volts to 5 volts. We'll be using 5 volts. Common ground, SCL, the clock pin for I2C, SDA, the data pin for I2C, and then the 1.8 volt out, which we will not be using. So here we are. We have the setup we did in the previous tutorial where we introduced the light sensor, which is over here. We are going to bridge from the light sensor straight into our SGP30. We can do that thanks to I2C using addressing as its standard. So we can actually bring to here, and then if we want to the next and to the next and so forth. Okay, so the yellow is SCL and the orange is SDA. Clock for yellow, data for orange. That will be put into the SPG30, SDA, and SCL. We will take from the common ground rail and put into the ground of the SPG30, and we will take the 5 volts from the 5 volts common rail and put it into VCC. let's get into the code. But before we get into the code, remember, all of the code is available on my GitHub page. The link is in the description below. If you've not defined the I2C interface yet, you'll need to do so before we even start touching the code. So please have a look at my previous tutorial when I explain how to use I2C and where we put light sensor into the code. Again, before we get into the code, since our I2C part is already in the code, we should be able to find the SGP30 at address 0x58. So we're going to go into the logs and we're going to let the logs run. I will wait for one of the sensors to give some data. It's actually more than that, which is perfect. We're going to scroll back, and right here, we found I2C device at address 058, exactly where we thought it was going to be. Now we can go into the code, and for that, we're going to go into edit. And first things first, we are going to scroll down. And we are getting into the area where we should be adding our code. You can see right now the DHT22. You can see the BH1750, which is our light sensor. So now we've got a little bit of space. I've got everything ready for us into the buffer. So I am just going to paste it and run through it with you. Firstly, we have the declaration of the platform we are going to use. This is going to be the SGP30. Following that, we are going to be pulling the data from the eCO2 sensor, which we're going to creatively name eCO2. The ID, and I think you've got the picture by now if you've been following me, that it's always device internal name and the sensor name. So in this case, it will be eCO2. The accuracy decimals, we're going to make 1 for now. We're going to do exactly the same thing for the TVOC sensor. Firstly, we're going to call it TVOC. I know, very creative. Then the ID is going to be our device internal name and underscore TVOC, and the accuracy decimal is going to be 1. Now we are going to store the baseline, and you're going to tell me, yes, but isn't there a whole lot of steps to get there? And I'm going to tell you, yes, there is. However, we are not going to deal with the baseline today. I will try to make a video about how to set up a TVOC sensor baseline at a later stage. I just want us to be able to use it right now. The variances are going to be very small, and you're going to understand why shortly. The address, obviously, is 0x58. And the reason why our variances are going to be low is because we are going to use compensation. We are going to use the temperature that we get from the DHT22, which is higher in the code, and the humidity from the DHT22, which is also higher in the code. The update interval is going to be at 30 seconds, like we've set everything else. And right now, we are going to install by clicking Install, clicking wirelessly, and patiently waiting that it is going to rebuild our firmware. And because I built the firmware a little earlier, it had cached it. It is now uploading it.
A few moments later.
And here we are waiting for the ESP to reboot.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
Here is our initiation. And now we have some data coming through. And we can see that the TVOC sensor is not giving us any data at this point. The eCO2 is telling us 400. We will talk about the limits and what that data means shortly. But right now, what I want to do is actually go back a little up. And you can see the SGP30 is a long a long sensor to track. It starts here and it goes all the way down to over here. All right, we are going to stop here. We are going to close here, and I will see you inside the dashboard. Before we carry on, I promised you that we would look at the CC811 eCO2 and TVOC sensor. Here we are on the documentation of ESPHome. If we scroll down a little bit, we will end up with this example. And you will see that outside of the CCS811, there is not much difference to the code that we have done. The difference, and let me point it out to you, is over here. Now, we do have address, like we've used in the SGP30, and we have temperature and humidity. However, temperature and humidity are not nested, and they are not indented. This is relatively important. You can't just take the code from the one to the other. It will fail. Let's visit the device. And to visit the device, we're going to click on Visit. Username is admin. Password is my secret. There we are. And we can see the logs on the one side. And if we go down, we still don't have any TVOC data. I'm not surprised. And we have eCO2 right here. So we've got it in the logs and in the device itself. Before we go and actually design something for the dashboard, there are things that we need to know. And these are what are the levels and what they mean. So let's decipher the values together and start with CO2 levels. In between 250 and 400 part per million, this is a normal background concentration in outdoor ambient air. From 400 to 1000 parts per million, the concentration is typical of an occupied indoor space, and there is good air exchange. From 1000 to 2000 parts per million, people may start to complain about drowsiness and poor air quality. From 2000 to 500 parts per million, headaches, sleepiness, feeling stagnant, feeling that the air is stale, stuffy, with poor concentration, loss of attention, increased heart rate, and slight nausea may be present. From 5,000 parts per million, we've reached the limit that we can take. From 40,000 parts per million, you are then in oxygen deprivation, resulting in permanent brain damage, coma, or even death. Now, let's talk a bit about TVOC, and let's decipher those levels. The recommended safe level is below 0.3 milligram per cubic meter. At this level, the risk of adverse health effects from VOX is minimal. From 0.3 to 0.5 milligram per cubic meter is within range of indoor air quality and remains acceptable. From 0.5 to 1 milligram per cubic meters, we should start getting concerned. From 1 to 3 milligrams per cubic meters, it's becoming serious. Anything beyond that will impact health and comfort, especially over the long term. Now, let's go and implement something like that inside of Home Assistant using the horseshoe card. If you haven't seen my short tutorial on the horseshoe card, please click on the link above and come back here when you are finished. We've got on the right-hand side a very basic example of a horseshoe card. We are going to do something far more complicated than that. So again, if you haven't installed Hex, if you don't have the horseshoe card yet, please click on the link above. I will also leave it in the description and go and see that video and come back when you're finished. So we're going to open this card and we're going to hit edit. Now, right now it's getting its information from Open Weather Map temperature. We are going to change that. To change that, we need the sensors. So we're going to duplicate the tab. We are on this tab, going to hit here to expand the menu. And we're going to go all the way down to settings. In settings, we're going to go to devices, ESPHome, one device. And as you can see, we have eCO2 and TVOC already. To get the sensor name, you click on the sensor that you want on the range, and right here, you can copy it, and we can go back here, and we are going to put, instead of sensor open weather map temperature, we are going to put sensor.esp room sensors eCO2. We're going to change this from temperature to ppm. And the attribute does not exist, so we are going to take the attribute out. And this is where we're going to stop right now. We're going to save, and you can see 400 ppm Johannesburg. We're going to edit again, Control-Alt-A, so that we get the lot. We're going to copy it. We're going to cancel. We're going to add a card, scroll all the way down, put the manual card in, delete this part and paste it. Go back to the settings, close this, and we are going to go and click the range card. And again, click on copy, go back here to the top, and we are going to do sensor. We're going to replace it with TVOC, TVOC in parts per million. And we should have 0, which is correct. Now, this is not to show you exactly how the horseshoe card works. I will do that in a separate video. Right now, though, what we are going to do is go back to this one, edit, and we are going to go all the way down. Now, right now, what it does is that at about 10, it goes from red to blue. According to what we've learned earlier, up to 400, we are pretty safe in the blue zone. So we can do 400 here. From 400 to 1,000, we are in another zone, which is a bit more dangerous. If you don't want to use names of colors, you can use hex values for colors. How do you get hex values for colors? We go to a hex value color picker. So we're going to look for one. Color picker. There we are. Okay, we'll take the first one. It doesn't matter. Here we are. I guess it's this one. Yes. Does it work here as well? Yes, it does. The first one, I believe, should be a very light green. So we're going to take that color and we're going to go back, and this should be, in my opinion, a very light green. Now, if you do this, it won't work. I have to put the hash before it. Let's see if it works, and it doesn't. Or doesn't it take? Oh, it may need to be like this. Save. Yes. Okay, so we've got it. And from 1000, I would like to go a little darker. In fact, I'll go a quiet there. We are going to take that and again, hash. And now we have another color.
A little longer than a few minutes later.
And what we are going to do as well is change Johannesburg to my room eCO2. Oops. eCO2. We are going to save, and this is basically what we're going to get. I don't know why it ends up there. So right now, we are in the green. If you want to, you can change one, you can change one. So, yes. So right now the horseshoe scale starts at -10 and goes all the way to 40. This is why everything looks wrong. So the minimum is going to be -0 and our maximum is going to be 6000. Okay, so now that we've got all of that sorted, we're going to save and we're going to see that we are only at 400 and it is pretty safe. Now, I haven't beautified it or anything of the kind. I will show you quickly what it would look like if we followed this, but instead of using the actual values, I'm going to take a 0 out of here. And I'm going to put 400 here because that will show us, that should show us. Oh, I'm still up to 6000, which is why it doesn't work. Okay, this is what it would show us as. And you can see there is a gradual from the green to the red, passing the other colors that we've actually put in, which are both here and here. Okay, let me go and put it back to what it was. This is 400, 1000, 2000, and this is 5000. Okay, and we are going to say that this is at 6000. Save. Now, because I'm not getting any data out of the TVOC sensor yet, what I will do is I will wait until tomorrow and see if there is data coming through. And right now, this is what the eCO2 looks like. We can pretty it up and we can do something quite nice to view. To give you an example, let me hop directly into my setup. This is my setup. This is directly from my weather station. So it's not indoors, but outdoors. You can see that CO2 is actually extremely high in the moment. You can also see that our lowest is at 407, which is equivalent to what it should be outside and bordering onto inside. And the maximum is at 7,992, which is current. I live in a city where going outside at night is actually a problem. Johannesburg is air-wise very bad. Same thing go for TVOC. You can see that at a point we were at 1 parts per billion. And if I look, this was probably around 2 o'clock. And yeah, this was probably around 2 o'clock. And right now is at 1,156 parts per billion. So these are things that you can get to do with the horseshoe card. The bottom of it, I will also cover in a different video. It is a graph that comes from Hex. And this is what we're looking at being able to do. It's something like this, where you have all of this data available to you. This is where we're working towards slowly but surely. I think we've covered eCO2 and TVOC in quite some depth. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial and explainer. But before I leave you, I'd like to thank Steve and Stephen for their kind donation of coffee again. And I must mention my first Patreon, a home automator manager, Stephen Brouillard, ou Brouillard, as we would say in French, who has been not only a contributor, but also a source of inspiration during our discussions on Patreon. And it is very, very appreciated. The channel may be small today. We do not know where we're going to go tomorrow. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to help a lot more people. Before my goodbyes, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and smash that notification button so that you never have to miss a video. If you wanted to support the channel, I have started my Patreon. You can go and have a look at the Patreon. I will leave the link below. And I wish you the best with implementing a eCO2 and TVOC sensor, whether it is the SGP30 or it is the CC811. This is Pascal signing off, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.